Well, guys, thank you for joining us today for TEN Capital's Syndicate event. Appreciate you guys joining us today. Before we kick off our presentation, I'd like to talk a little bit about TEN Capital and what we're doing here. At heart, this is our syndication event. We do several of these a month, virtual online events that we're doing. And so with that, let's click into the slides. I'm Hall Martin with TEN Capital, the CEO and founder, and TEN Capital started in 2009 under the name Texas Entrepreneurs Network and rebranded to TEN Capital in 2016. And at heart, we help startups find investors and help close them for their round. We help put together pitch decks, due diligence reports, analyst reports, and other tools to help close investors, as well as set up events, both online, in person, and dinner events. In short, we provide the legwork, saving you time and money. Next slide. In addition to this event, the Life Science Syndicate event, it's a 2-hour event where we have investors come and listen to pitches and give feedback on the deal as well. We also have those in the audience that are looking to invest. We also have the Family Office Roundtable. It's for family offices, for those who want to start and run family offices. We bring speakers in talking on those topics. And we also have the Quick Pitch event, which is for tech companies as well. And we are adding a new one called the Investor Education Session, where we bring in experienced investors sharing their experience and skills for what they look for in startups, as well as having educational sessions as well as pitches. If you're interested in learning more about TEN Capital's events, go to tencapital.group, click on the events button, and you can see all the events that we have coming up. Next slide. If you're a startup and you are interested in raising funding, please take a picture of that QR code and fill out the form. We'll follow up with you to see if this program is a good fit for you and if you should join our program to go raise funding. We have been doing this since 2009. We have helped over 780 companies raise funding. Last time we totaled it was just over $1 billion. So have been doing this for a long time and have seen a lot of startups and know a lot of investors in the space. Next slide. We also have a chatbot. We have a program called Investor Connect, which is a podcast program in which we've interviewed over 850 angel VCs and family offices, and to learn more about what they invest and how they invest. And what we are doing now is we've also built what's called the Startup Funding Espresso, which is a 300-word micro blog post. Let's hear about that program we call AVA, where it contains all of our content and gives access to you through a chatbot interface. Let's see the video.
Hi there. I'd like to introduce myself. My name is Ava, your personal AI venture assistant. I'm your new best friend in the world of investing in startups, the TEN Capital AI chatbot. I'm here to make your journey through the startup ecosystem easier, faster, and a lot more fun. Need help finding your next big investment? Or maybe you're a founder looking for fundraising tips? I've got you covered. I pull all my knowledge from over 500 blogs, countless podcasts, and even some nifty calculators, like the How Fundable Is Your Startup tool, to give you the answers you need. So how do I work? Easy. You simply go to where I live on startupfundingespresso.com and look for me in the bottom right. As soon as I appear, go ahead and click on me to let me know you're here. And then there you go. All your questions answered at your fingertips. Whether you're into health tech, biotech, life sciences, or any of the other exciting fields out there, I'm equipped to help you navigate the trends, challenges, and opportunities in each one. Got a question? Just ask. And guess what? I even pull insights from the TEN Capital Network podcast on Investor Connect. It's packed with expert advice, success stories, and more, all designed to help you succeed in the venture capital world. So what are you waiting for? Let's chat. I'm here 24/7 to help you find the right answers, connect with great opportunities, and make the most out of your investments. See you on startupfundingespresso.com.
Great. Thanks for that. And with that, let's go and kick into our presentations. Our first presenter today is going to be Ken Mariash of Sinaptica. Ken, if you could go ahead and launch your slides and kick off when ready. Each one will have 10 minutes to pitch and 5 minutes of Q&A. For those in the audience, please put your questions in the chat box and we'll answer those as they come in.
Okay, great. Hey, thanks all for everything you do and for the great introduction. So, Ken Mariash here, CEO of Sinaptica Therapeutics. We have developed a personalized form of brain stimulation for Alzheimer's, which has two completed successful phase 2 randomized clinical trial results. They're published in peer-reviewed journals and were successful on every single measure related to slowing the disease of Alzheimer's in terms of cognitive domains, functional domains, and even impacting the behavioral disturbances of Alzheimer's. So completely successful results in Alzheimer's on the gold standard endpoints that FDA requires for approval. We're backed by Sony, Time Zero Capital, and Pure Land Ventures, as well as many other investors, over 50 investors now in our current convertible note. So, Alzheimer's, obviously a holy grail of medicine. The thing about Alzheimer's, unlike other fatal brain diseases, is it swallows the lives of caregivers in a way no other brain disease does. I actually lost 2 grandparents to Alzheimer's, so I know how it engulfs the lives of my family as it does many others. And the usual suspects are amyloid and tau, which are loosely correlated with disease progression. And you might say, yeah, isn't Alzheimer's a graveyard of failures? Well, that's because we've been focused on the wrong suspect in this case. Now, amyloid definitely has a lot to do with the disease process, but the drugs that are just out in the last few years, they clear amyloid and the disease continues. There's got to be more to the picture than just amyloid. We're looking upstream of amyloid, looking at the root pathology of the brain networks themselves that drive human memory. Giacomo and Emiliano are scientific co-founders. They have been collaborating for over 10 years on this therapy and are the inventors of our technology, our brain stimulation technology. Importantly, they're backed by the Gates-backed ADDF with 5 grants between the two of them. Emiliano's over at Harvard and Giacomo's at the University of Ferrara and at the Santa Lucia Foundation, where the phase 2 data was done. So we're focused on neuroplasticity, which means the induction of new connections and strengthening connections in the brain through electrical stimulation. That's what neuromodulation does. People don't debate whether or not neuromodulation can induce neuroplasticity. It can. The question is, can it get enough neuroplasticity to strengthen the networks against this freight train of a disease? So the key technology that we use that is patented is TMS with EEG at the same time, concurrently. When we stimulate now, for the first time, we can see the structures that we're stimulating in the brain, because before now, it's really been shooting in the dark. So this allows us to confirm that we're hitting the right target. In our case, the target itself is the whole network that drives human episodic memory. That's the default mode network. So Alzheimer's being a disease of memory, this is the most affected network in the brain by the disease. And we see DMN dysfunction 20 years before symptom onset. So by stimulating the network and making sure that we can light up the entire network with evoked potentials and confirm that with TMS EEG, we can slow down the disease of Alzheimer's by strengthening the network. These are the results from our first phase 2 study. It was 50 patients, randomized 1-to-1, at a 6-month endpoint. We hit the primary endpoint and key secondary endpoints related to cognition and also to function. I would note that on the functional endpoint, this is the gold standard endpoint of activities of daily living, we were able to stabilize the disease entirely. These patients lost no function whatsoever. And we also have an improvement in the signaling in the brain. We raise the levels of gamma signaling in the brain, and we preserve the signal transmission in the brain. This is right out of the phase 2 paper, whereas it falls in the sham. We call this the EKG of the brain. This is measuring the health of the network. And you see these lines overlap because there's no degradation in the network at 6 months in the real, whereas in the sham, there's a lot of loss of function there. We also have imaging data that shows, based on fMRI, that we create new connections in the brain. We preserve the microstructure of the brain, and we even preserve gray matter volume. So this is a disease-modifying therapy. It's a weekly painless 20-minute therapy that is bending the curve of the disease progression. And now we've done it again in our second phase 2 study, now at 1 year. This is the primary endpoint, the gold standard clinical dementia rating sum of boxes. That is the gold standard, and we hit it again with flying colors. So this has just been published in a recent journal. This is the best the drugs can do. They have all kinds of side effects and barely work. We've got FDA breakthrough designation, and the ADDF is coming to us for investment in our next clinical trial. So this is the therapy itself, weekly painless 20-minute stimulation. Every patient gets calibrated. Where we stimulate and how we stimulate needs to be individualized for every patient, and we do that. And we induce neuroplasticity, which is, again, strengthening the network at the structural and functional level of the neurons. So we've got reimbursement, we've got patents granted, multiple moats to this therapy, which could make us, Sinaptica, $290,000 per system per year from just 40 patients with 4.8 million on label. We can also make our neurology customers up to 400,000 per system per year, and that's just from 40 patients. Some of them have hundreds of patients. We've done our homework. We've talked to these accounts. They're very excited to get their hands on this therapy, as it represents not only a non-invasive way to treat this disease for once for no option patients, but also a moneymaker for neurologists. And we've got our reimbursement codes. We could generate up to 900 million by year 7, and of that, 700 million has drug-like recurring revenue margins. In the case of Boston Scientific, if they had control of this therapy, they could go to 2.2 billion. And how do I know that? Well, I was the head of strategy for Boston Scientific's Neuromod division, which is the very division that would acquire us. So I know how much they would be able to generate. We've got some of the biggest names in the world on our SAB and commercial advisors as well. This convertible note funds an Italian multi-center phase 2 study, which already has 25 patients enrolled. If we're successful, we can double the LTV per patient. And that's going to be followed by a pivotal study, which will convert into the Series A. At that point, NovoCure is a good example of what we could do if we IPO'd. They went public for 1.8 billion. That's a fatal brain disease, glioblastoma, except Alzheimer's is 400 times bigger market than glioblastoma. Or we could be picked up by Boston Scientific. These are some of the deals they've done. Or Medtronic, Abbott, LivaNova, Philips, GE, many different acquisition opportunities. So there's about 1.4 million left in our note. Actually, this number drops by the day. It's now down to 1.2. I just closed another 200,000 yesterday. So join us, be one of the 50 investors onto the note. It has a 55 million val cap and a 20% discount. We can show you a pathway to 20x returns with some very believable assumptions. Obviously, anything that works in the disease of Alzheimer's will be a massive success. So happy to take your questions and happy to get you into the note. We've got probably another few months left before we're filled.
Great. Can you talk about the exit strategy? Who are you talking to and what's been the discussion so far?
Yeah, well, Boston Scientific is my alma mater. I've been invited to their corporate headquarters twice now in person to meet with their key senior leadership. And from the BD side and from the commercial side. So Jim Cassidy runs the division there, and he's very interested, obviously, in Alzheimer's because they've already invested in one Alzheimer's play back in 2016. So 10 years ago, they invested in functional neuromod. I actually was part of that deal, so I know they're interested in Alzheimer's. They already have a DBS franchise that calls on neurology, so it's a good commercial step out for them to go from movement disorder neurologists to Alzheimer's neurologists. Medtronic makes a lot of sense too. These are just the deals they've done in the neuromod space, let alone dozens of other deals. I think Abbott would be good as well. They also have a very large neuromodulation division. They bought St. Jude for the neuromod division for 25 billion. So they do have some enormous acquisitions in their past related to neuromod. LivaNova, I am talking to under NDA as well. LivaNova is becoming more acquisitive. Johnson & Johnson, not yet. They have a number of neuromod plays. I have not been able to get much traction with them yet, but I am talking to GE. Their CFO hired me at Baxter about a long time ago, and they're open to big iron, of course, because they are big iron, and we are exactly a magnet, just like an MRI is. So GE could own the patient from end to end, from diagnostics to imaging to therapy to our biomarker. That's what they would have if they were able to buy their way into what Sinaptica is doing.
Great. Then we have a question from the audience. Paul, if this is weekly office treatment with so many patients, this becomes hugely personal and personnel intensive. How are you going to handle that?
So TMS is already scaled for depression, and it is a pretty successful therapy in terms of adoption. It works okay in depression, but it's second line. So it's it's a therapy that has gotten some traction and adoption with technicians being able to come up to speed in about 3 days. So with 3 days of training, you can go from 0 to 100% proficient. I show a doctor administering the therapy, but honestly, it's a technician, and these are kids out of college. If you go to any TMS clinic, I mean, they're like in their 20s. You don't need a lot of specialized skill to do this. And the system that we are building with NextStim, they're a publicly traded Finnish company. It is already approved, so it's completely de-risked. The system actually exists and scaled worldwide, FDA and CE mark. The software is so intuitive and so user simple. We were just in Helsinki the other week getting our hands on the first prototype for our next study. And people who have never handled a TMS device before can intuitively get it. It's like a video game. You're navigating the coil into space. The bullseye turns green when it's in place, and you press the foot pedal, and that's all it is. The system cannot misfire because it's limited by the neuronavigation to only fire when it's in the right position, which the system mandates. So it's pretty easy to get up to speed. And guess what? Neurology clinics do EEGs all day long. That is their bread and butter. So for them, doing an EEG on top of this is no big deal for them.
Right.
Oh, and by the way, the money makes sense. So if you're making over $200 for a 20-minute therapy, that's a really good incentive to adopt the therapy. Remember, the neurologists don't make any money on the drugs, zero. In fact, some of them lose money on the drugs. So here we're making them $400,000 from each system.
Great. The question, what is your minimum investment size for an angel investor?
We've been asking for 50. We occasionally take 25. Sometimes we get 200 from individuals. For institutions, it's 250 minimum.
Great. Can you talk about the investors in so far? What were the reasons they invested in? What were the top 3 reasons you heard?
We can send you testimonials and letters, and we can even send you diligence from the Curates folks and from other investors. Pure Land is a major investor. They joined the board. They're excited about the potential of this to be a platform. So it's not just for Alzheimer's, it's also for memory enhancement, for stroke, for TBI. Our patents cover all of that. So that's one thing that really excites people. Another thing is just that it's a breakthrough in a disease area that has, almost no competition. So they love that the size of the market is absolutely massive. I mean, we're talking about 6.6 million patients, of which the moderate patients have no option. They've been handed a death sentence, unfortunately, and there's nothing for them. And then other people are more enamored by the AI-driven approaches, the fact that we are using real machine learning, not fake, machine learning, but actual random forest models to be able to do disease classification, but also to parse the data that comes back from the brain in order to determine we're in the right spot. Some people really like the machine learning aspects of what we're doing.
Great. And I don't see any other questions. If you do in the audience, please go ahead and post them now. Ken, what's the next step for you after you finish the fundraise? What will you be working on?
Well, we're pretty close to done, Hall. We're excited about how much traction we've had in the last few months. As I said, we've got, I think the total number of people in the convertible note, and Pi can correct me if I'm wrong, is like 58. So we closed about 40 just in the last few months. I'm excited to move on to the next stage, which is our pivotal study. We have the prototype ready to go. We've had interactions with the FDA and the design of the study, so that is set. Lisa, our chief clinical officer, has already run a pivotal in Alzheimer's with an implant. So for her, she knows the sites, she knows the vendors, she knows all the different raters, all the aspects of running a study. So we're excited to get that going by the end of this year. And then we'll be on the market potentially by 2028. That is really fast. We're not talking about a 10-year drug development program that could take, thousands of patients. We're talking about 120 patients is all the FDA is asking for to get this thing on the market. That's super exciting and super fast.
Great. Dan, thanks for joining us. What's your question?
Oh, good. Hey, so I really enjoy watching Ken Mariusz bring this amazing technology along. So smooth, effective. It's becoming huge. I'm an angel investor in the company. I've been working with Ken since meeting him through the Kurates Forum Northwest group, and we jumped right aboard the DD. And wow, that's a really good DD set of interviews. I think they should be updated. And so my question is selling, right? It's always about selling. We've already found you as a highly qualified, best of the best CEO based on our 22 criteria. You sort of knew that when you graduated the due diligence process in September, and then I got an opportunity to work with the company. So I'm a hired gun because I want good, big programs products like this to succeed, and this is a heavy lift, no doubt about it. Ken has been able to battle through all sorts of headwinds. He got the FDA to cut things in half or more. And it's like speed the plow, reduce the cost, swift. So I keep coming up with since it's so safe and gentle, it's a deep tissue massage for the brain using magnetisms, right? Why can't it just be out there? Why can't we just say, yeah, bring one over to this nursing home? We got 40 guys that will up every, week with you for that. I mean, why does the FDA got such a broomstick up about it's amyloid proteins, we got to spend a zillion dollars on stuff that doesn't work? But the beauty of what you're doing as a therapeutic instrument is it's the same for everybody versus all those drugs. They're going to be a little bit different for everybody, and that's the problem. And so, yours piggybacks with them, right? If people are in a dementia state, how early can they get aboard one of these trials?
Yeah, so I just got a text this morning from another desperate patient. It's really it makes me cry when I get these kind of text messages. This is someone I know, and he's begging me for access to the therapy. He's prepared to drive his father, in this case, all the way across LA once a week to get this therapy. The whole family has swung into action because they know what a gruesome, awful, horrendous death their father faces that they will have to be witness to. And so if they don't do something, it's going to be just awful. They know it. And so I want to get early access for certain patients if I can. We're starting to spin up sites. We will deliver the first prototype to Denver this week or next. And then other prototypes are flying to Italy the next month after that. And then maybe we can send a few more units to the US, to various centers in the US. I can't charge for use right now because it's not approved, but other clinicians we're working with might be able to offer it. So, we don't really need to do much marketing. Patients are coming to us desperate, wanting access to this therapy. It's a terrible problem to have because I have to make some tough choices here.
And real quick follow-up question, I'll drop my hand. The Alzheimer's Drug Discovery Foundation loves you and loves your founders and the inventors of all this. And this is for Hall Martin for, I think you know this, right? It's the $100 million Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos money that says, we're going to beat this thing in our lifetime. We're not going to show up in that clinic without, a helping hand from a Synaptica. In any event, where are they with the this current raise?
So they want to put in 3.6 million. So we're going through some back and forth with them on some aspects of how the funds will be used. But the grant, it's not a grant, it's an investment, is for 3.6 million. They really do want to see this succeed. Their mandate is they know that there's no silver bullet here. So, it's not just Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates, it's the Estee Lauder family. It's all three of these families have put 500 million into this. And if we're able to slow the disease by, say, 60, 70, 80% with our therapy, if you add a drug on top, the idea is maybe you get 90% slowing. God knows, maybe even 100% slowing someday. So they asked us to combine our therapy with a drug. It turns out that they have a patent that they share with our scientific co-founder on a drug called rotigotine. So it's a perfect match. Add rotigotine to what we're doing. Rotigotine is a dopaminergic agent. It's just a simple patch. It doesn't have the deadly side effects of the amyloid therapies. It seems to work pretty well in phase 2. Giacomo's doing a phase 3 right now with rotigotine by itself. So why not combine it with our therapy, given it's a daily patch, easy to administer, super safe side effect profile, and see if 1 + 1 = 5 in this case. They could be really synergistic.
Yeah. I love that math. I think that math is real.
I love
that.
Too.
That's very motivating. So wait a second. Have they commercialized, or is this still a science project at Harvard?
Oh, no, we can't commercialize the therapy. We got to do a phase 3. FDA is very clear. You must do a phase 3 and prove that it works. And if your question is rotigotine is approved for Parkinson's. It's not approved for Alzheimer's. So it'd be an off-label use of a drug that's already out there. So if that's your question, yeah, easy to combine because it's already available.
And we have one more question from the audience. What's the IP situation? Is it licensed from an academic entity, or where did it come from?
Yeah, so Emiliano and Giacomo from Harvard and from the Santa Lucia Foundation, respectively, they are the co-inventors. They assigned their rights to Sinaptica. One by one, we've gotten sign off from their various institutions that say their institutions have no right to the patents. We're going through a little bit of additional machinations with BIDMC, that's Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, which is part of Harvard, to see if we can get a sign off from them. That's one little overhang that I'm trying to finish. But would it be so bad if we had to do a little licensing agreement with Harvard? Then we could say that we are using IP that's out of Harvard. It's from a Harvard professor, but it's actually coming from Harvard. And then we would have the resources of Harvard behind us as well to help us with all kinds of aspects of getting this therapy over the line. So that's a little overhang that we're working through. It's very common. We often see licensing agreements with this kind of IP, especially if the IP is worth, in our case, could be worth billions. So of course they're keen to get a small piece, and that wouldn't be so bad for us.
Great. Well, thanks. That's the end of our time. Great presentation, Ken. Great
Thank you.
questions, Dan. And with that, let's move to our next presenter. We have with us Edward Bruce White of Combat Medical. Edward, go ahead and launch your slides and kick off when you're ready. And you got full stream mode. You're good to go.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for inviting me to present today. My name is Edward Bruce White. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Combat Medical. I've been with Combat Medical since its inception, and I built up the company. We've raised just north of $17 million so far. And this round, we're looking to raise $5 million. We've already got 2.7 million committed from about 12 investors. We've got over 40 publications from phase 1, phase 2, and run real-world registries with over 1,000 patients. So we've got good clinical evidence supporting where we've been able to produce the product. So what is the actual problem that we're facing today in cancer? Well, in a number of cancers, there's been no innovation. The treatments aren't effective, they're not affordable, they're poorly tolerated, they've got lots of nasty side effects. And what is the main cancer that we're going to focus on today, and the biggest problem, and that's bladder cancer. So bladder cancer is one of the biggest cancers, and I'll go into that in a bit more detail, but unusual compared with most presentations that you'll actually see is we've actually got some commercial credibility in terms of what we're doing. The product's already CE approved. We've over done 100,000 treatments within Europe, sold in over 30 countries. We've got 4.3 million in sales, 700,000 in positive EBITDA. We've got over 40 publications. We've got strong IP supporting the product. And today, again, we're going to focus on the bladder because that's going to be our first to market, but it's a platform technology and we're already treating peritoneal cancer. We had a Innovate UK grant for £4 million, and that's for ovarian and colorectal cancers. Those products are now about to go into first human clinical trials. And importantly, in terms of the focus of where we're going to get enormous value is the FDA trial, which will enable us to get into the US market, but importantly, be able to come at a standard of care within Europe and the rest of the world. So here you can actually see the system. Sorry, I apologize. Here you can see the system running. We have a system and a catheter, which we place into the bladder, and we recirculate the chemotherapy, giving multiple washes after the treatment. So what's really important in terms of the treatment we deliver, whilst we're delivering it into the cavity, we're giving targeted treatment, which is delivering drug just to the effective area, so there's no systemic side effects. Our powerful and precise heating exchanger via our patented aluminium heat exchanger ensures that we deliver the temperature very accurately. So we deliver the temperature within 0.14 degrees of the actual target temperature, which is critical, which I'll talk about in a bit more. We also control the pressure, which makes it tolerable and comfortable for the patient. And it's user-friendly. We're, like I say, we're on 350 hospitals across Europe. It fits in. We've actually done 20 patients in the US because we got an IND for a humanitarian basis when there was a drug shortage at Duke University. And I said, we're used with multiple drugs. So whilst I present a number of drugs that are potentially competitive, they could actually become partners to us in the futures. So why hypothermia? Well, 106 Fahrenheit, cancer cells become stressed. Good cells are okay up to 111. So what happens when you apply this heat to them, that they start releasing heat shock proteins, and these signal to natural killer cells. So the cancer cells actually then stimulating, creating a lasting immune response. The chemotherapy drug itself becomes more active, We get more permeability in the cells with the cytotoxicity raises by 10 times. And all this has been proven in animal tests and cell tests. So this is what we're doing now. And what we're now proving is in terms of the efficacy that it actually produces in patients. And we've got lots of clinical data to be able to show that's happening as well. So if we explain what the patient pathway is today, so you get diagnosed, then you have surgical treatment to remove the cancer. And then following that, you'll either get 27 immunotherapy treatments over 3 years with really pretty high, nasty side effects, or you get 15 chemotherapy treatments over a year. And then this is the shocking thing, is 50% of all patients will have a reoccurrence in the first year, 80% of patients in the lifetime. So what does this mean? Is you go through the patients and it keeps on reoccurring, and eventually you'll then have to have your bladder removed. Once you have your bladder removed, it does solve the problem in 90% of patients, but you have a lifetime of incontinence in patients, which is why bladder cancer is the most expensive cancer to treat. So what's different with our pathway? You're diagnosed, you have the surgery, you have 15 treatments. It's the same with chemotherapy. We have similar side effects to cold chemotherapy. So it's no worse than the worst, best solution in terms of tolerability. And this has been proven in phase 2 trials. But what we do and what we've shown is we significantly reduce the reoccurrence rate and progression rates. So that means that they keep on going. We reduce the number of treatments that they have to have, eventually the number of surgeries they have, and most importantly, the number of bladders that we save, which is a very morbid and horrible operation. I mentioned we've got 40 publications. This is one. This is focusing on the FDA trial that we're running, and it's been approved, and we're about to enroll the first patient anytime now. And you take the very worst case patients in here, we actually get a result of 69.5% complete response rate at 12 months. This is a really important number. If you remember, at 70%, you'll see this, and I've got multiple papers from multiple groups of hospitals that have been able to produce similar outcomes in terms of these results. So Merck has been hugely successful. They've solved a number of problems. They've had a fantastic success, and they've seen the benefits of this. They've got 30 billion in sales. It's still growing in a number of cancers. But in bladder cancer, which they've tried an enormous number of trials, they've only got a 19% complete response rate at 19 months. Ferring done license deals. This is showing you the value and the potential of this market. It really is real. But in terms of their outcomes, they've only got a 24% complete response. This is what they published. Immunity Bio, a 2 billion market cap, NASDAQ listed company, focusing again on bladder cancer. In terms of their results, again, not as good. CG Oncology, another company listed in the beginning of 2024, 2 billion market cap, 46%. They're the actual market leaders in terms of actually the ones that have been approved. Immunity Bio has got FDA approval. CG Oncology hasn't. They still listed at 2 billion, raising over 500 million in cash. Johnson & Johnson, again, they've just released their data. They valued this potential market at up to 5 billion in sales in terms of the market, 44% complete response rate. So what does this mean for patients? So if you look at HIVEC, over a 12-month period, we will have successful outcomes for 7 out of 10 patients. You take Johnson & Johnson, which is most probably becoming the leading product, they only successfully treat 4 patients. So we're seismically different than them in terms of outcomes. We've got an FDA ongoing trial, and we're running in the UK. It's been approved by the FDA. We had 3 meetings with the FDA, and it's going to become a drug. So in the US, we become a drug. In Europe, we're actually a device, which shows you the high levels that you have to try and achieve to be able to enter the US. So how confident are we in this trial converting and being successful at getting FDA approval and also in terms of translating into market traction? Well, the ex-FDA chief medical officer that wrote the guidance for the approval for this particular indication is now a consultant. He's leading our discussions with the FDA, and we've got a very strong team behind that, including Hellman and Feltz, King and Spalding. Icon are leading the actual publication. This trial is about to start the recruitment. Now, as an investor, this is the most important thing that you really need to focus on. This trial will run. We'll have the first interim results by the end of 2026. At 2026, we'll have 75 patients. CG Oncology are listed with 66 patients with worse data than we have at a $2 billion market cap. So that shows the value where we are. We expect FDA approval by 2029. In terms of our position today, we're direct in UK and Spain. We've got over 35 countries that we're selling in. And in terms of actually the bottom up to see where the value comes from and how we drive the business going forward, if we take just the market that we're focusing on initially, just in the US, so this is people that have failed the BCG immunotherapy treatment, it represents 10,000 patients of the 100,000 patients that are in the US, 15 treatments of ours, 150,000 treatments total, $4,000 price point. Now, this $4,000 price point per treatment compares to $36,000 that other companies are charging for this. So we're considerably less. And that's saying, so in our financial model, in which when we said is conservative, we actually only have a potential market for the US in this particular indication of 600 million. If we take the total addressable market, 800,000 patients in the world, and we're looking at about almost a $9 billion market. And remember, this is just bladder cancer. Bladder cancer, in terms of our markets, is actually the smallest one that we're focusing on, but it's kind of first to market. And if you don't believe us, because analysts are following this now, they believe that the market will be up to 21 billion by 2034. We've got a business model established. We provide the systems free of charge, and we make all our money from our kit. We've got strong margins already. Today, our margins are 80%, and they're going to increase close to 90% as we grow, optimize costs, and we go into the US. Distributors and partners make good money from it. We have good distribution. Already today, 90% of our sales come from single-use kits. That's mean people are repeat sales and continuing to buy every single time. We've already established robust manufacturing and supply chains. We've got deals with the largest supplier of mitomycin in Europe, a very well-established and known German company, to be able to provide the mitomycin, which we're going to sell into the US. And we're expecting sales to exceed 500 million by 2032. We've got an excellent team with know-how that's been there and done that. We've raised a lot of money. We've done IPOs. We've done cash, developed businesses globally. And our key opinion leader and clinical advisory board is made up of the who's who of bladder cancer and also hypothermia. People actually invented the original procedures for the peritoneal cancer, which we're developing. So the problem, there's been no innovation that's been effective, affordable, tolerable in the world's most expensive cancer. Well, there's a solution to that, and that's HIVEC. We've got a lot of competition into the market, and in terms of they're beginning to get there, some of these products have been approved, both only in the US by the FDA. None of them are approved in Europe, so we're the only player that's within Europe. And you compare our treatment with significantly better on efficacy. In terms of costs, we're a fraction of the price, but and effective. We already fit in with the clinical community, and we've proven that we fit in the clinical community with the US. We've got very light side effects, not nasty side effects, which includes death, by the way, of some of these systemic treatments that are given. We've done 100,000 treatments, and if you combine all the treatments of these companies today, they've done less than 10,000. So our experience is massive compared with them. So where are we today? We've raised almost 18 million. Our pre-money value is at 38. We're looking at being able to close the balance of this round, and it's the first time that we've come to the US. And this money is purely for the FDA trial. The FDA trial is $7 million because it's being run by clinically initiated and supported by the NHS in the UK. And we're contributing 2 million of that out of the money that we make. We need 5 million more to be able to support that. This is really the key points in terms of taking it forward, the inflection point. At the end of 2026, we have our first serious inflection point. We'll have data, and that converts into real value in terms of tangible value in the public markets. And the second value inflection point will be at the end of 29 when we have the FDA approval. Our exits, in terms of the way we're looking at it, is a trade sale. And we can talk a little bit more at the end in terms of what we're doing, but we're speaking with Boston Scientific. We've got active conversations with J&J as well in terms of the platform. And in terms of what we actually have to do to achieve that, we have to get the FDA trial approved and launched on the pathway. That is active. We've got 2 centers that already enrolled, another 15 that will be up and running by the end of August. We have to finish off this round to be able to successfully fund all this. And like I say, we're well on our way for that. And then in 2026, which isn't very far along the way in terms of investors, you'll be able to see the complete response rate. And even at that point, we might be able to realize the sale of the bladder business and be able to move on and focus on the other cancers, which today I haven't actually had a chance to be able to talk about. And the market values are staggering in terms of what we're looking at. I'll leave you on this slide and take some questions in terms of this is a pathway and the timeline of where we are at in terms of the business. I'd like to thank you for your time.
Great, great presentation. Quick question here about the $4,000 per treatment for a disposable kit. How does that compare to the competition, and how's that industry standard?
So if you take the existing competition at the moment today, chemotherapy, a vial of mitomycin in the US is about $1,000. So it's more expensive. We're actually, for that, it's supplying the device and the drug combined. It's a special formulation of the mitomycin to be able to work within our system, and a double dose. So in terms of actually the existing treatment, we're marginally more expensive than existing treatment. But if you actually compare it to the drugs that are coming on board, so if we take Immunity Bio, they are selling each treatment, the drug, not the treatment that includes the nursing, for $36,000 vial. It's almost $600,000 per treatment. So we're looking at about $60,000 for an entire treatment. And the reason why we're focusing on a lower price point, potentially when we get into this and we take the advice, we might go for a higher price point. But we're targeting not the 10%, the people that fail BCG. There's a bigger market of high risk, which is 50%. Now we're targeting that, and even American healthcare reimbursed insurers aren't going to be able to afford that type of price tag for 60,000 patients. And so what we believe is that we can be able to help everybody. And in Europe, like I say, we sell an entire treatment, 15 treatments for a year for $4,000, and we're making over 85% margin on those disposable kits.
Right. And Dan, what are your questions?
Well, God forbid I would ever have cancer, but my brain goes to blank check. How can I possibly fix this? If he's showing me $60,000 for 15 treatments for $4,000 a pop, I'm thinking that sounds great. And how soon can I get it? Where do I have to go? Coming to an oncologist specialist near me here in New Brunswick, and we're J&J's headquarters, a lot of cancer activity here in the region. So, and I am an investor in some other anti-cancer platform technologies. So, wow. And as you might have heard, our number one criteria is show me someone who can sell. And here's Edward Bruce White generating all kinds of profitable revenue and going into a clinical trial for his own bladder cancer drug, which he has a mechanism to sort of ensure that it's going to be better, more accurate, less toxic, less lengthy of a period of toxicity, let's say it that way, and come in, sweep out the bladder tumors, which are SOB tough to treat. And so it sounds to me like all the right elements are in place. Here's a early stage company with a guy that can sell. OMG. Thank you, Edward. Right? And the passion shows, and he's all over the world. You can bring up that map of the globe where high-tech treatments are taking place. And now it's going to get not just bigger and better, it's going to be an order of magnitude with their own drug that might be preferred because it comes as a kit, another kind of kit. So anyways, my question is, Edward, when you were young, what were some of the early sales that you managed to transact in a tough, usually probably a tough environment, and you're so learned and polished? What were some of your earlier obstacles that you really had to face and overcome?
So in the early days, we had just the first 15 patients that we had, and we showed tremendous success in that. And so you have some evidence to be able to go and sell and build the business on. And we did strike lucky in the early days. There was a shortage of the BCG immunotherapy, which is the main treatment for bladder cancer, for high-risk disease. So at that point, we got approval of Class 2 in Europe because it's a lower level in terms of the approval. And we had some limited clinical information. And so we went around and we started speaking to a few doctors. And at that point, they said, well, we've got nothing else to try because we've got shortages, and we started building up. So there's some significant institutions that started using us. So they treat their patients, and they could see that it was well tolerated, that it was easy to use, it was setting up, and they could say, well, it's not doing any worse than just giving them the chemotherapy, but it seems to be working. And because we're talking about high-grade disease, which chemotherapy hasn't shown to be as effective in. And so they start creating their clinical data. And that's why we've got so many publications, because all these hospitals created the publications, the information, and they start looking at their database and comparing the results. And so we take Leicester, which was one of the university that's running the trial, that one of the highest volume centers for bladder cancer in the UK. They analyzed their data, and when BCG came back online, they continue to actually treat a significant majority of their high-risk patients, which the guidelines clearly say you should use BCG immunotherapy for. And they got approval for that, and they were treating up to almost it was over 700 patients in a year, which for us at that particular time was enormous. If we did 700 patients across all the hospitals that we were selling today, we'd be already doing $20 million, 20 million pounds. So be more than in dollars. So I haven't converted that. So a significant number. And so it was, as I call it, was a try and buy. You go and try it, and then once you buy it, it starts selling itself. So, you know, you'd like to say I'm a good salesman, and I really thank you for saying that, Dan. But once you've got a good product and people can see that it's easy to use, that it works and it's effective, it becomes much easier. And that's why we're growing at 15% every single year, but with limited clinical evidence that is from phase 1 and phase 2. But when we have a phase 3 clinical trial, I mean, we're focusing on the FDA because the FDA brings such enormous value. We sell for such a higher price. It's such a big market, the US. But in terms of actually where we are, it's a massive conversion because we are looking at actually getting the guideline committee approval in Europe. That's our number one aim from this clinical trial, because we'll be able to convert that. The European market isn't as big because it's a lower price point, but it's still worth 1 billion euros. So it's a massive market, and we'll actually have pretty much the control of that market because we're playing against all these drugs. They'd have to sell for less than 30,000 euros a patient to be able to access the market, because it's just too expensive for public healthcare systems. So I think we'll almost have a virtual monopoly within Europe because we're already established. We're already in pretty much most of the major universities. And like I say, selling is the device in terms of the treatment because it's easy to use and it works.
Great. We have time for one last question. Dan?
So thanks, Hall. Edward, I'm focused on this $20 million investment round, which starts probably soon, but it culminates, I think, in 2027, 20 million. So walk us through the capitalization today. You're about to wrap with another 2-point-something million. You'll fulfill the 5 million needed for the full clinical trial for the bladder cancer sauce that you're bringing to the market. And then that's going to be spent along with the revenue that you're also generating. And that will, I guess, increase during this year and next, bringing you to 2027. So are you looking to grow capitalization in a series of smaller tranches, like 5 million gets us here and 5 more million gets us there, et cetera, and then grow the enterprise value up each step like that? Or do you need the whole McGillicuddy and then worry about the headwinds that are going on in big bio VC marketplace?
So in terms of the money, the reason why we'll need most probably half of the 20 million in value in that single chunk is because we need to be able to present the FDA file, and we also need to have the CMC for the new combination of the existing mitomycin for this combination product. So in terms of how we get that valuation, we wouldn't raise that money until we've got the interim results. And like I say, the interim results convert into, almost unbelievable valuations. And along that way, also, if you're just looking at a sale price, we're still looking at a 20 times return on investment, but we're talking at this particular stage in terms of being able to raise money, 40 times X because of the valuations. And that's where we're just, again, being conservative, talking about the bladder business, because we've got 2 products which are going to first in human, and colorectal cancer, that's 4 times bigger than bladder cancer in terms of the treatment. And nobody's ever done and delivered drugs like we've been able to do, isolating parts of the colon. It's never, ever been done. whereas we've already got a competitors within in the bladder. So, you know, I can see in terms of raising the money in terms of that will come from even with some of our private investors, whether we have to go externally for that. There's also the potential, the optionality in the future is beyond that, is looking at an IPO. And why we say an IPO, because we're a platform technology. There's actually only one company that we believe that will be able to take a bite, and that's J&J, and that's why we're talking to them, and we've got active conversations with them. But like I say, we have periodic conversations with Boston and Teleflex and CR Bard, which are all within this sector and hopefully become active. They're all very, very conservative, and they want clinical evidence. And now, you know, I actually sold my old business to the group CEO of Teleflex. And, you know, he was very clear with me when I went to see him. I said, I've got this great product, you should invest. You bought Eurolift for $1 billion. And he goes, Edward, he said, we've got one of the best sales and marketing organizations. He said, when you've got a product that's ready to go and we can sell it, we'll put it through our channel. And we don't mind spending serious money. We don't mind spending half a billion or $1 billion on it, but we need a finished product. And that's pretty much the attitude in terms of what they're looking for. They really want to have a safe bet. And so that's the, you know, the what we're trying to do. And because we can do it on our own self, is to be able to get that clinical trial. We can protect all our existing investors because once we've got the clinical data, we've got a convertible value. And that means that we can all go through and enjoy the journey. And whether that's selling the bladder business and being able to realize it and have our first payout, a significant payout, which I say like 20 times investment, and then go on into the rest of the businesses. You know, it's going to be a very exciting journey for us in the next couple of years.
Great. Well, appreciate that presentation. We're at the end of our time. Thank you so much. With that, let's wrap up with Dan Connolly. He has a presentation for us today. Want to hear from him about the entrepreneurial evaluation support. Dan comes from the New Jersey Angels. Dan, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and then talk about the evaluation support system?
Well, Hall, you know me, I'm kind of shy, so it's, you know, I'm a little reluctant to tell you all about myself, but I can do it in a minute. I work for my grandchildren. They are taskmasters. So I've been growing a portfolio of wonderful companies for 20 plus years. I was a stay-at-home dad, and I got to get involved in this venture capital industry, being right next here to Princeton and Rutgers. And as the ecosystems of entrepreneurship emerged and grew up, I got to go out during the day and in breakfast, lunch, and dinner with all sorts of wonderful, brilliant, genius inventors and multimillionaires and family offices and such. So I'm just still doing that. When I was a little kid, I was an extra read all about it paper boy. And it turns out that now I'm in my 60s, I'm kind of still doing a extra read all about it paper boy. Now, the headlines, in all fairness to Ed at Combat Medical, the headlines have been about Ken Mariusz and Sinaptica, OMG, a breakthrough treatment, not a drug, anti-Alzheimer's. Wow. And so I'm also blessed with having met other wonderful CEOs and such. So our family office doesn't like to make mistakes. I like to have a nice, enjoyable Thanksgiving dinner with not having to explain another bankruptcy from COVID. OMG. So we have a pretty rigorous, I'm going to share this screen here. We have a pretty rigorous, what we call, there it is. You can see that venture evaluation process that can help entrepreneurs gain a certain level of objectivity about how the market might see them. And therefore, we'd like to get them supported. Let me make sure I can walk down. So the 12 criteria, or the 12 show me keys of raising early stage capital is there. And number one, of course, show me someone who can sell. So if Ken Mariusz is still on the call, I would so much like to know about how he sold the RF ablation unit from the sellers to himself as the buyer, at the Codman division of J&J, which kind of made Ken a Boston Scientific hero when that business took off, like you said. So was he overselling? Did he underdeliver? Who knows? Let's hear it from Ken.
Well, so I was the author of the strategy that said that we should get into RF ablation for pain because it was a natural fit for our sales folks, their call point, their skill set. The technology was a good fit. Everything just seemed to make sense. And most importantly, what was underappreciated was that one product could drive the sales of the other, so-called pull-through. And that's an unappreciated advantage of having a portfolio where there's synergies between the two products. And so I authored the strategy that said we should get into this space. And then systematically, we looked at the targets at Boston. And the way the Cosman franchise folks sold their business to us was they put the 3 generators, there were maybe 4 generators on a table, and they walked through the advantages. They did a show and tell me, right? And so I remember I was in the room and they showed us how theirs worked relative to others, and it was just head and shoulders. They had a better box. So that was a big lesson to me in like show me kind of sales, right? If you just talk about your product or even just show the data, it's not the same as a tangible in-person demonstration. So for me, that was a lesson in, tactile selling and experiential selling. I think it's really important as you go out and sell. Now let's flip it. Now I'm selling Cosman because we own it and I'm the GM and I'm running the franchise. And a lot of it was Salesforce incentives, making sure those Salesforce incentives were aligned to drive that pull through, to open those doors from one account to the next. So the spinal cord stem reps were incentivized to open the door for the RF reps and vice versa. We did some bundling deals too. There were really creative combinations of the two products. We didn't really need to sell clinically that much. It was pretty well established that RF ablation works. Where we really sold was on the economics and just looking at how a box can pay for itself with some basic assumptions about, procedure use and volume. And so it wasn't really that complicated. The biggest barrier to adoption was honestly the capital equipment budget at these accounts. Some had a 6-month cycle, some had a 12. Making sure we could get in line and jump on an account when they were, at their budget opening and had the money available to replace or upgrade a box or add more boxes. That was really a key. So it's really a lot of blocking and tackling. There wasn't anything that sexy or exotic about it. It was just nuts and bolts selling. And, having great data too helps. Having a great product too works, but sometimes just blocking and tackling kind of selling can really do it for you. In the case of Sinaptica, we've got to do all that and then 10 times more, right? We do have to sell based on data. This is 100% fatal brain disease. These are desperate patients. They want to know that it works. And so clinical selling with the highest science possible, getting all of the stakeholders aligned on the adoption of a therapy is important, let alone being baked into the guidelines at the highest level. If we can get there, that's kind of the the holy grail of adoption in my book, is when you're actually baked into the treatment guidelines for Alzheimer's. That would be the eventual goal. But adoption of a big piece of capital equipment is a complex selling process, and data is just one piece. There's also logistical concerns like, will it connect to my network? What about cybersecurity? What about privacy? How do I talk to my patients about this? How do I advertise this to my patients? Lots of questions, and then reimbursement and co-pays are also going to be a big factor as well. So it's complex. Selling capital equipment is not like selling pills. It's a lot more involved. But once you get into an account, you can own them for life, and you can get upgrade cycles in there. You can upsell them on many things. You can introduce new products. It's a great way to, have access when you have a piece of capital equipment there, because you can walk right into the account. You don't need an appointment. I'm here to fix blah, blah, blah. I'm here to tell you about blah, blah, blah with the machine that you own. It's unprecedented access that having a piece of capital equipment can often give. And also it's internet connected, so you can see how it's being used remotely. And you can come in when you see utilization is suffering and say, hey, I noticed your utilization is down. Something we can do to help. Anyway, I don't want to go on and on, but those are some lessons in selling.
Right. Hey, Dan, we got 5 minutes till we need to move to breakout rooms, but looking forward to the rest.
Okay, well, in 5 minutes, wow, that's a lot of ground. So, well, I can just read this list, right? But that's no fun. So what we're expecting from CEOs is to know that this is a sort of analysis that's going on in the back of the mind or in the front of the mind of any investors in the audience, any prospects, any people that even want to sell their services. They want to back winners. And so exemplifying these characteristics and traits, et cetera, and demonstrating them in the deck in a concise way, not just hoping you know stuff, showing that you know stuff, big deal, and illustrate, et cetera. So actually, Ken's story about that acquisition and being the internal champion at the J&J division for that huge success, right? That kind of a story gives us during the due diligence phases of, this is back in say August, September of 2024, we learned about this, and it just changed the attitude about, wow, this guy thinks he knows everything. Well, he does know a lot of the really important stuff. I mean, this to Synaptica could end up being sold back to Boston Scientific. Let me just leave it there. So, anyways, what we also see, and we see this with Edward Bruce White, is an unfair advantage, team skin in the game. I mean, I met him twice. Him flying from London here and back and forth to America to hustle this process. So clear passion, fire in the belly, team depth. And since he's been doing it and he knows this stuff, the financial projections are, I think they're ready to be audited, right? Ed, I think when you get a venture capitalist that's going to come along and say, I want to see 3 years of audited financial statements, do you have an answer to that?
Yeah, no, we already audited.
Okay, great. Congratulations. So just by the way, tell us a little bit about more sales that are taking place until Paul pulls my plug. Because you have a lot of revenue in your future, I would imagine, even in 2025 and 6.
I mean, the limitation we have is really, clinical evidence. Clinical evidence means that people follow the guidelines, which the European and American guidelines. Obviously, we're not approved in the US, but in Europe where they're approved. So that means that we have to be used as an outlier treatment. And, year on year, we're growing at 15% in the bladder business. That means hospitals, and predominantly they're university hospitals that use us because they're the ones that are in a position to be able to evaluate, capable of being able to determine the treatment. And also they're the referral centers. They're the patients, they get the most number of patients that are the worst patients. So in Holland, we're in exclusively universities. We're in 11 out of the 12 university hospitals. And it's the same pretty much in all countries. And that's where we grow the business and people have the experience. So it's that's how we grow. But in terms of actually clinical evidence, once we have clinical evidence that's level 1 clinical evidence that would be able to change the guidelines, and eventually obviously going into the guidelines, that's seismic. It makes it unethical not to use your product once you've actually got the evidence.
Okay. That's a very important distinction there. Thank you for reinforcing it 3 times. Before we go, because I can just tell that Hall is TikTok, I just want to admire how you've brought forth Dr. Sugarbaker as your key advisor. In our preliminary due diligence, looking into Combat Medical, it's come up 3 or 4 times as people said, oh, okay, well, if he's aboard. So I'd like to make sure that we can get an interview with him when it's time, and we're going to undergo a due diligence process more formally.
Sugarbaker's amazing. He created the peritoneal treatment. Everybody thought he was a crazy doctor. It's now become a standard of care for late stage peritoneal related treatments. But his dream was to take that further. They do 10 hours of surgery. It's incredibly serious surgery. And then after that, they do one single hypothermic wash. And that's been shown to be hugely beneficial in those very late stage patients. But we're talking about patients where the cancer spread throughout the whole of their cavity. It's a very nasty disease. It's more of a question when the patient is going to die, unfortunately, not if. So he then went on being his crazy doctor, and he only had his license taken away when he was 80 years old. He's had to stop practicing now, but he's still the head of the patient surface malignancy cancer group. But he did trials where they put an implantable catheter into the patient, and then he put chemotherapy in there and then continue washes, and he showed a 20% improvement in survival. So in these patients, it's absolutely seismic. It really is transformational. But the problem is that got infected, the catheters, and you're putting 3 liters of chemotherapy, and then you're leaving it in there to naturally absorb. It gets horrible, nasty, toxic side effects. So what we've been doing, we've been working with him, and he's been working pro bono. He won't let it. We said, we'll pay you for his time. He's come over and seen us, and we've helped develop a catheter, implantable catheter. We know how to deliver fluids and to be able to control the temperature. We've got various catheters to be able to do that. He's helped us develop a catheter we can leave in for 6 months and to remove it to be able to give his treatment. And there's
Wow.
already
6 months. Wow.
there's already 2 phase 2, phase 3 trials that show that this is beneficial. So all we actually have to do is make a catheter that doesn't get infected, that can be removed, that doesn't have toxicity issues because the drugs can be removed and recirculated, and just get the same results. We don't have to do better than his results. And bear in mind, 50% of his patients in this 300 patient trial didn't get through the treatment because they're having so many nasty effects. If we get rid of that and we get even more patients, then we should have a much better outcome. So again, it's not a type of, you can never guarantee in cancer anything's going to be a home run, but all we actually have to be able to do that. And this catheter has been finished doing all the laboratory experiments. We've done pig experiments, and we've got a clinical trial that's approved in Spain, and we should be going to first in human any month now in terms of the treatment. So again, that's an enormous market and potential to be able to go and take over for ovarian cancer, which is a massive market, and there is no clinical solution for this as well. So it's a greenfield site.
Hey, just so that the audience knows, my screen share is paused. I don't know why. I was just sharing my screen to show that they both pitched, Ed Bruce White and Ken Mariusz, at last Tuesday's CEO Bake Off for the Money semifinals. So one of them, maybe both, will be an invested company, maybe again, this coming June 24th, which is our best of best CEOs Bake Off for the Money. So it's not just one winner, everyone wins. And if anyone's in Philadelphia, we're going to be at the Pyramid Club in person.
Great. Well, thanks, Dan, for coming on and giving your information, and I'd like to invite you back to go through the rest of the list. I think it's a great list. I think we have some guys in the audience who'd like to talk to some of our speakers, and we're getting near the end of our time. So we'll jump into breakout rooms for now, and looking forward to having you back as soon as we can, Dan, for more content if we can. So thank you for joining us today, and we'll thank our presenters and our audience for this. And with that, we've got the breakout rooms open. Let's jump in and catch up our discussions with the presenters. Thank you guys for coming.